with a tokenistic approach to the Galamsey fight?
To be honest, I don't think that anybody sees the environmental crisis as something good that they don't want to do anything about. I believe that what they are caught in, and I take this perhaps from Atufosin's conversation with you, where he was saying basically that the money from Galamsey saved the economy. I think that the government that was cash pressed, you know, you're coming in where you're closed out of the bond market, you're not able to raise financing, sees gold board and see the ability to raise this as the lifeline of your economic policy, then that becomes your approach. And you're worried then about whether or not taking any step might disrupt that and what that does mean for your ability to manage the economy. So I think that they are prioritizing the economy over the consequences.
Will this Galamsey fight be the ultimate test of his credibility?
Or even his legacy beyond credibility itself? Because
it's big enough to define his legacy.
I think so. I mean, in the same way that Dumso defined the first one, I think this is perhaps the bête noire of this.
Do you think he and his people know this?
Certainly we stepped out to remind them, you know.
Because I get a sense that they feel the economy was the biggest issue, which got people angry with the previous government, among other things. And therefore, I think he believes if he fixes the economy, people would say he's done a good job. Without thinking about the broken promise of Galamsey. I don't know. That's
I think that the social anxiety of Galamsey perhaps has been underestimated in terms of how people are feeling about it. But also importantly, I think a lot of credit is not given to the idea that, you know, a lot of times in Ghanaian societies, young people activism happens on the campuses. We have been able to move that onto Twitter and to folks who are no longer in the universities. And so we are building an ecological movement among young people who are more ecologically conscious. The NGOs, Arosha and others, are doing a lot of work around this and keeping the, you know, the environmental question forefront. So that amount of work makes us be interested in the conversation and having the conversation. And so anybody who then feels that, you know, even if the city was to go to 1 to 6 to the dollar, the Galamsey question is not going to leave the president. It's going to continue to haunt him.
Or could it be that those who support Galamsey and the economies that are oiled by Galamsey, they are more vocal and more serious than those of us who claim to be against it? And the fact that maybe the demonstration, for example, didn't have a lot of people. If I'm a politician sitting at Jubilee, I'll say, when I go to Takwa and I say I'll stop Galamsey, maybe the whole town will collapse because a lot of people there do mining, which may not be legal. And yet there are a few people who say they don't like Galamsey, they are shouting on the radio, but when they do a demonstration, only 200 show up. So why should I stop Galamsey?
No, I think that will be conflating the issues. I think that we're a society that has consistently been protest shy. Like the fact that we are breaking some fronts we should not overestimate how much work Face the Country has done in trying to get a lot of young people interested in going out onto the street.
It's not about Face the Country. No, this more. I mean, I'm talking more about if you look at the inertia. Maybe those who benefit from it are more frontal and formidable
I think
than those who claim they don't want it.
In many respects, they have more proximity to power.
Possibly.
Than you know, the general population that, you know, feels some way about it. So, but I don't, in many respects, I still won't be able to say that the level of power they have would be sufficient as to block the government from seeing, you know, public sentiments on this more generally. So I think that there's a problem where the government itself understands or perhaps is afraid of the risk of the economic collapse more so than being afraid of those who are there and doing this. But the truth is, we have a terribly weak state. I mean, we overlook it and we overestimate the capacity of the state to fix problems. It doesn't have it. And so when you're confronted with something which is young people in those communities are consistently going out, your capacity to, how do you call it, to scare people with the might of the state becomes demystified, you can't do much. So you see, even in those instances where the military has gone in and said, we have recovered this, well, we're waiting for you to leave. Essentially, it's going to be the approach consistently.
That's an interesting
you can't reclaim and hold across the country. And so they know this. And this is one of the, you know, demystifiers that we must be afraid of, particularly in terms of terrorism. The same thing happened with Nigeria. The Nigerian military, for instance, was seen as, you know, they had the military strength within the ECOWAS. Then when terrorism started testing that, realized that, okay, this is actually in shambles.
They couldn't even find their Chibok girls.
They couldn't even find the Chibok
within
girls.
their own backyard.
You know, then the corruption issues within the military also came to the fore. So that's kind of, I mean, security is always...
So some of this is the weakness of the state.
The weakness of the state generally is showing. And that weakness is also both not in terms of ability to flex its security might, but also its responses to economic anxieties of persons within those to provide them an alternative livelihood.
Okay.
We don't have the mechanisms.
Still on the legacy of Mr. Mahama, if you look at the pre-election, economy, Galamsey obviously, and then corruption, oral seems to be a big issue. And I think I heard the General Secretary of the NDC say that some people in government are trying to cut deals with people in the opposition. Are people as interested in oral as what I read on social media suggests? When you talk to people on the ground, are they as angry about the so-called loot that has to be recovered? Or is this some political thing that's just going on?
So, you know, different society have different moral benchmarks about what it is that moves people, particularly to the polls.
Yeah.
So if you go to France, a politician might be caught in a sexual scandal. It might not do much. Whereas in the US, it's a big deal. In Ghana, for so long, corruption has always been the issue that people get riled about. People are interested in changing government. I mean, we shot people at the stakes for corruption and things like that. So there's some emotional markers around, you know, that we are seeing that, and that's why oral, for instance, tested very well with voters. But we haven't, again, put in place an infrastructure that allows us to be able to effectively prosecute. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in terms of, and I have folks who are defending some of the people who have been accused of you know, offenses in the previous government, lawyers, who say that they have gone into meetings with investigators, and some of the questions they're asking, they knew from there that oral will fail. Because there's no even sophisticated investigative capacity to ask the right questions. You go into the room and they give you a paper, okay, write. That's how we caution, and say, write your statement. Did you write your statement? Okay, we give them the statement to go home and write and bring. So we don't even have the ways in which we properly investigate. And so at the end of the day, nothing is going to go to before prosecutors. And then, I mean, let me not start on the dysfunction of the court system and how it works. So it's a problem that even if will exists, the will can only carry you for 6 months.
So the structures to really go after political corruption in a legal way are not well founded.
No, it's absent.
Wow.
It's absent, completely absent. And I mean, this is not the first time we have had a, you know, anti-corruption conversation. But particularly now, because one of the things I was hearing consistently from the NDC is the questions around state capture. And the fear that the amount of money that had been looted was an existential threat to even the NDC itself. So you would think that coming into power, that they would understand that breaking the structure of how much money was being held by the opposition would be, in the long term, even for politics reason, beneficial to them in the long run. They just will not be able to find.
Or could it just be that they use that to generate public angst, and that maybe it wasn't true? I mean, my point is, you can let people get angry about perceived corruption because there are 1 or 2 big cases. But then where the rubber meets the road, you don't even have the evidence and you don't really have a case, and therefore it becomes, you know.
This is what I am convinced by. But I have had enough proximity to power to understand that any government project that is rolled out is not rolled out for the benefit of it, but that is a new deal. I don't for one believe that any time we do any public expenditure, across the value chain, people are not looking for a way to skim. So it has become embedded in the way in which government functions. So it is untrue to say that it doesn't exist, the corruption. Of course, you can generate, how much you can generate for Ghanaians to care. Because in many ways, Ghanaians also become desensitized to some low-level types of corruption. So yes, there's an element of social engineering that makes you angry around certain things. But across the value chain of every public expenditure, there's bound to be corruption at every level.
But if the person who's supposed to prosecute the guy who did what you just said is also seeking to continue to benefit from that system.
So that's the thing.
How does he do it?
Our investigative structures themselves are not immune from the corruption value chain. So they themselves, in the way in which it is built, right? So you may take an accused person to there and he's leaving and he gives the investigator, oh, take this for water. It is so embedded in the way in which we investigate. So many times we have clients, even as lawyers, where the investigators are chasing them for money. You know, so it has just become the culture and way of things that even the mechanism that are supposed to check the problems are themselves showing symptoms of the problems they claim to be fighting.
From what you are saying, you are not very optimistic that oral will recover a lot of loot.
I mean, for me, from the beginning, I kept saying that, you know, when the president put in place that preparatory committee before he assumed office, I kept saying that sadly he became, you know, a letterbox for whistleblowing. I was hoping that they were coming to think through structural reasons why this could fail, and for which reason we're thinking about holistic legislative institutional reforms. But that was not a product of what they did. And I don't think that ORA can succeed without